Today, we're diving into some big legal battles that are shaking things up in American society. First off, there's a wild new proposal that could really change things for a lot of people. A $100 tax every month for anyone who's still single after turning 30. Then, President Donald Trump has made waves by signing an executive order to cut funding for National Public Radio and the Public Broadcasting Service. And let's not forget about the intense deportation case involving Kilmar Garcia Jarkin, which really shows the complications and challenges of immigration law in the US. Let's begin. A significant factor contributing to low birth rates is the increasing number of young people choosing to remain unmarried or delaying marriage. In the US, the average age of marriage has risen from 22.8 for men and 20.3 for women in 1960 to 30.5 and 28.6, respectively, today. This delay is partly driven by extended time in higher education, subsidized student loans, and cultural shifts prioritizing career and personal development over early family formation. But can they be fined for choosing to stay single? However, the claim taps into real historical precedents. In ancient Rome, the Lex Papia Poppaea imposed penalties on unmarried individuals, while the Soviet Union introduced a childlessness tax in the 1940s. These historical examples, often exaggerated in online discussions, may inspire contemporary misinformation. Current US tax law does create disparities. Married couples filing jointly receive tax advantages, such as higher standard deductions, while single filers face higher tax rates at lower income levels. For instance, a single filer earning $90,000 faces a 22% marginal rate, while a married couple with the same income faces only 12%. Countries worldwide are experimenting with demographic policies. South Korea and Japan offer subsidies for married couples, while Hungary provides tax exemptions for families with multiple children. These policies, though not taxing singles directly, create relative disadvantages. The misinformation succeeds because it exploits real anxieties. Singles often face higher per-person living costs without the economies of scale couples enjoy. Cultural pressure persists, particularly in Asian countries, where marriage is seen as a social norm. Our analysis reveals a crafted narrative designed to sound plausible, yet alarming. The specificity of $100 monthly and after 30 suggests intentional misinformation, exploiting fears about government overreach and societal judgment. Always verify alarming claims against official sources. The takeaway: while marital status significantly impacts tax calculations, no government currently taxes singlehood directly. Moving to our second story, President Trump signed an executive order on May 1st, 2025, targeting federal funding for NPR and PBS, accusing them of biased and partisan news coverage. The order directs the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to cease both direct and indirect funding to NPR and PBS to the maximum extent permitted by law. This follows a previously reported plan to rescind $1.1 billion in CPB funding. The administration's rationale includes allegations of radical woke propaganda, citing NPR's feature on queer animals and PBS's documentary on a transgender teenager. White House claims cite an 87-0 Democrat to Republican ratio in NPR editorial positions.
Well, I think it's important that we do things together as a country. The enrichment that PBS has brought to my life, to our collective lives, is just undisputable. I think PBS is part of the pursuit of happiness machine.
However, legal challenges loom. CPB President Patricia Harrison states the corporation is not a federal executive agency subject to the president's authority. Congress controls CPB funding secured through 2027, and the 1984 Supreme Court case, FCCV. League of Women Voters ruled governments cannot condition funding on editorial decisions. The funding context is crucial. NPR receives about 1% of its budget directly from federal government, while PBS and its stations derive about 15% from CPB. NPR estimates every dollar of federal funding generates $7 from local sources.
Short of 10 years, you don't get that kind of space anywhere else but public broadcasting. And it's just one of our crown jewels, like higher education that you mentioned at the beginning, like our national parks. This is who we are. It puts the us in the US.
PBS CEO Paula Kerger called the order blatantly unlawful, while NPR vowed to vigorously defend its funding rights. The CPB also faced a lawsuit from dismissed board members, whom Trump attempted to remove earlier that week. Public support remains strong. A Pew Research survey shows 43% of Americans support continued federal funding, while 65% of Trump voters support public media funding. The broader impact threatens public service. Cuts could disrupt national programs like PBS NewsHour and Morning Edition, as well as emergency alert systems. Rural stations face particular vulnerability, potentially creating news deserts in underserved areas. This executive order represents more than a funding dispute. It's a battle over the future of public broadcasting and independent journalism in America. Our final story involves a constitutional crisis over deportation that has reached the Supreme Court. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia was illegally deported from the United States to El Salvador on March 15, 2025, in what the Trump administration initially acknowledged as an administrative error. The case centers on protections granted in 2019, when an immigration judge found Abrego Garcia faced well-founded fear of persecution by the Barrio 18 gang in El Salvador. This withholding of removal status explicitly prohibited deportation to El Salvador, yet he was sent to the notorious Seco mega prison.
If they can hear from the President of the United States and they facilitate his return. How do we know that? Because when I spoke to the Vice President of El Salvador, he was very clear. He said the ball's not in El Salvador's court. The ball is in the Trump administration's court.
The administration has shifted from admitting error to making serious accusations. Trump himself alleged Abrego Garcia has MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, posting digitally altered images as evidence. These claims have been widely debunked by multiple sources. Additional allegations emerged, including human trafficking claims from a 2022 traffic stop where Abrego Garcia transported construction workers, and domestic violence allegations from 2021 that his wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, later withdrew, stating they resulted from caution after surviving prior abuse. The legal standoff escalated when courts ordered the administration to act. The Supreme Court unanimously ordered the administration to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return, with U.S. District Judge Paula Shinas later accusing the administration of willful and intentional non-compliance. Trump contradicted his own administration's legal arguments in a revealing exchange. After claims of powerlessness, he admitted, "I could get him back, but chose not to," citing gang allegations. This admission undermined arguments that El Salvador's sovereignty prevented action, especially given the $6 million agreement where the U.S. pays El Salvador to detain deportees. The human cost remains severe. Abrego Garcia has experienced trauma in detention, while his family faced harassment after DHS exposed their address. His wife continues advocating for his return, telling the press, "My family can't be robbed of another day without seeing Kilmar." The case represents more than individual injustice. Legal scholars warn it could set precedent for denying due process to all residents if government can label individuals as threats without evidence. As Judge Sinas stated, this case isn't about whether Abrego Garcia is a terrorist. This case is about the government unlawfully removing a gentleman from this country. These three stories reveal broader themes about truth, power, and justice in contemporary society.